You didn't come here to simply survive. You came here to thrive, to reconnect, and to remember who you truly are. Welcome to the Return to Her podcast, where we uncover the knowledge that empowers us and discover the wisdom that's always been inside. Here, we blend spiritual insights, modern psychology, and embodied wellness practices to help us realign all aspects of our being, body, mind, and soul. This is where science meets spirituality and true wellness becomes our way of life. I'm Cassie Dalton, yoga teacher, energy worker, holistic coach, and intuitive guide. While I'm still walking my own wellness and spiritual path, my mission now is to walk beside you as you return home to your most authentic and empowered self. Now is the time to return to her. The content shared in this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please consult a qualified professional for any personal health or wellness concerns. Now let's dive into today's episode. Hello again, divine souls. I'm so happy to be joining you again today. Happy Easter for those of you that celebrate. Happy Passover, happy Earth Day. Today is actually Earth Day as I'm recording this. And happy day, whether you've recently celebrated a holiday or you're just happy to be here for one more day on this beautiful planet, doing your thing, doing what the divine has called you here to do, perhaps, or starting to step more and more into that, as I think we all are. So I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge that some of you might have realized I didn't post an episode this previous Sunday on Easter Sunday. And I was actually pretty intentional about that. Well, let me say it this way. I recorded an episode to post. I wanted to talk about my reflections on my connection with Jesus, since that was, Easter. It would have been released on Easter. And after I recorded it, I listened back and I just wasn't happy with really what came out of that. I do have some maybe a little bit different from mainstream views and beliefs when it comes to that beautiful divine soul. And I don't feel like I really represented the essence of how it is that I know and how it is that I love that soul. So I decided not to post it. I want to work on that a little bit more to make sure that it really does capture what is on my heart. And I appreciate each of you for giving me a little bit of grace and space to step back from that and not just publish something for the sake of publishing it, but to really give it the time it needs to be as intentional as possible. And for those of you that do look forward to my episodes being posted each week, maybe you've made a little routine out of when you listen, you're, going for a walk or whatever it happens to be. I do apologize again for not getting that published for you, but thanks again for your understanding, for your flexibility. All right, guys. So today's episode actually is not what I was planning on talking about. This morning after I dropped my kids off at school, I decided to go for a walk. It was lovely. I don't teach any morning classes on Tuesday. So Tuesday is always my day to just kind of get things done that I want to. As I said, I'm recording this on Earth Day, the 22nd. So this is a Tuesday. And as I was walking this morning, I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, and it got me to start to think about some things, as a good podcast will. It kind of jars some things or jogs some things or, brings fresh inspiration, even if it's not, the inspiration that I'm getting is not related to what I was listening to. They'll often bring a little fresh inspiration in. So after I got back in my car and the podcast ended, I just let it be silent, as I normally do. I normally drive silent. I don't like to listen to the radio. Every now and then I'll play one of my curated playlists that I really enjoy. But for the most part, I just like to be, I kind of like to be quiet. I don't like to have a lot of distractions. So as I was driving, I think it happens for a lot of people more than we realize, actually. When we're doing something that's really mundane or ordinary, in this case, I was driving the same route that I literally drive 4 times a day because I have 2 different drop-offs and going back and forth to my kids' schools and all of that. So anyway, I drive this route. Oh my gosh, actually, when I think about it, I used to drive this route because I grew up in this area. I would go to the high school. I drove myself to the high school once I was able to drive. Then when I graduated from college and came back and was a teacher, I taught at the same high school that I was a student. So I drove this same route. And now I'm driving it to drop my kids off at the middle school and the high school. So yeah, to say that this route is ingrained in my brain, this one is one of those it happens for us often when we just tell ourselves, I'm going to go this place. And then you kind of zone out. And next thing you know, you're at that place because this route has just become like the back of your hand. You don't have to think about it. So when I'm in those situations where things are really mundane and ordinary, that is when I get the most divine inspiration. My intuition just opens up because I'm not in a thinking mode. My thinking mind actually has kind of just settled down. It's been lulled to sleep, I guess I could say, as I was driving this really familiar route and I was just letting my mind be quiet. I wasn't distracting myself with anything. I started to get this intuitive hit and I started to have this conversation with myself. And I know when this happens, it's really having a conversation with my higher self, my awareness, whatever our language is around that. I know that there's something really special going on here. So I've learned more and more to try to capture these moments when I can. And since I was driving, I didn't have pen and paper. I couldn't just write things down. So I just hit record on my phone and recorded my thoughts. So once I got home, I went back through, listened back to try to flesh it out a little bit. So today's podcast episode is really just what I was thinking about when I was driving home. But I think that they're really big, important ideas. And I also understand that they're coming from a place within me that has been studying spirituality for many years and have been really trying to grind this knowledge into myself. I have a different way of thinking about things now than I used to. I have different language than I used to. So if it's a little bit too much for you today, all I want you to do is just soften and allow whatever I say that does resonate with you right now to just resonate. Take from this whatever works for you. And if there is maybe something that's kind of like, oh, I'm not sure about that. I don't know if I see it that way. That's okay too. Maybe just allow this to plant some seeds in your awareness so that maybe in the future, this might come up again and you have a different understanding. So with that said, let me just go ahead and get into what it was that I was talking about with myself or God or higher self, whatever, when I was driving home today. The first thing that I was thinking about was just the fact that, and I didn't always believe this, but I'm coming to understand it now more and more and more, that everything that happens really is the universe conspiring for my highest good. That is my belief. And if you want to borrow that, borrow it, because everything that happens is the universe conspiring for the highest good of all involved, actually. So I'm not special in that way, but of course, I take it as a personal application. So this came from when I was driving, just thinking about all the negativity that we are witness to right now, all of the fear, all of the pain, all the suffering, all of the things being dismantled, natural disasters, destruction, basically, war, tragedy, whatever it is. There's so much that we can turn to and look at and wallow in, really. And it's so easy to lose your sense of connection, your sense of hope, your sense of faith. And when you're seeing leaders doing things that you disagree with, that don't fit into your worldview, and you just see all of these things that go against what it is that you believe, it is really easy to, I guess, fall into the trap of victimhood, really, of feeling like you have no control in your life, that everything you value is being destroyed in front of you. And when you slip into that state of victimhood or that lack of feeling like you can control, well, first of all, we can't control anything. The only thing we can control is our reaction or our response to things. But when we start to really buy into that sense of being a victim of what's going on around us, that leads to feelings of hatred or animosity or judgment or resentment. And then those kind of emotions just continue to churn and churn and churn within us until they become so entrained, so enmeshed in our system that we can't tell where they end and we begin. We can't separate from them. We feel like we are those feelings, those emotions. And I'm aware of this absolutely because I've been there, done that. I didn't get a t-shirt, thankfully, because I would just have to throw it out in one of my constant decluttering quests. But so many of us know exactly what I'm talking about, and we don't need a t-shirt because we wear this on our hearts. It blocks our ability, actually, to come back to that heart space, to come back within, to connect with our soul, to connect with the divine. And as I'm talking about this, that's obviously a very natural thing. It's very human to see all of the things going on around you that you don't like, that you don't prefer, and having that kind of reaction, not only to those situations, but also to the people that you perceive are creating those situations. And it makes total sense that from our human, our ego perspective, that that's what's happening, that the world is falling apart. Our values, our beliefs, everything we've worked so hard for, it's just being ripped away from us. That is what it looks like. Yes, I agree. And it absolutely feels like that sometimes. But as my spiritual teacher often says, you don't have the right to judge what's going on because you don't know what's really happening. You don't know the truth with a capital T. You think you do, right? The ego mind will tell us that we can understand, we can analyze, identify, all of that stuff, but we don't actually have the ability to perceive the divine things that are behind what we're seeing with our human eyes. The mind is limited like that. It is limited very specifically because that sense of separation, that ego self, is what helps us operate as the human animal that we are in this world. So if you're listening to and believing everything that your mind is telling you, you're not seeing the whole picture. And as my teacher also says, the mind, it lies. He says, don't believe your mind. Don't believe everything you think, because that is a fast pass to suffering and even more illusion. And again, because our physical mind, our ego mind, or however you want to refer to that, is the illusion maker within us. It is the thing that makes us think that we are separate from everything else and everyone else and God. It was designed that way. It was designed to help you live out your human existence and forget the fact that you are a soul who is always connected to God, always in communion and union with God, always connected to everything and everyone. It is the thing that makes you believe that you are somehow separate, the thing that makes you feel like you're a victim in these situations, or you have something to prove, or you're unworthy, or you're better than. However, that sense of separation manifests for you, because we all have our patterns and it manifests in certain ways for all of us. And sometimes those ways are different. But here's what I keep coming back to over and over again in these moments of reflection when I'm trying to understand, not from a logical mind perspective, but by putting the question to my intuition, to my higher self, which is what helps me communicate with my soul self. It helps me in that divine remembrance, at least how I feel it to be true. The soul is a piece of God. So if you can remember your soul, if you can connect with it and align with it, that is the same as remembering, connecting, and aligning with God, because it is a drop of God that you carry with you all the time. And so the thing that I keep coming back to when I see the tragedies and the travesties around me, the natural disasters, the acts of violence, the corruption, the greed, hatred, racism, blah, 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 all those things that I don't prefer, when I see those things and start judging them or giving into fear or starting to become hateful or vengeful or bitter myself, how do I know? How do you know that what is going to rise from these ashes is not going to be better than what burned down to start with? How do you know that what comes from whatever is going on right now is not going to be exactly what we need next? How do you know that good isn't coming from what you perceive as bad? Well, if you're a slave to your ego mind, of course, it's going to tell you that it's all terrible. It will all be terrible in the future because this ego has a limited understanding of the bigger picture. It just cannot see it. It tries and it thinks it can, but all it does is base any future projection on what has already happened in the past. It is not capable of understanding the bigger picture where we're going. And it's like this scared little animal that's living within you, whose default setting is to always go to the worst case scenario and live in that emotional response. So the truth is, you don't know what is going to rise from these ashes, what is going to come from the destruction that you're perceiving around you. None of us do. And I don't know either, at least from the perspective of my thinking mind, who's trying to take its best guess and filters that with worst case scenario. But when I connect with my soul, I do understand a few things. Number one, God is love, unconditional love. And unconditional love to me is free from judgment, free from punishment, hatred, fear. So to align with God, to align with my soul, that piece of God that sparks this life, that means that I can't become those things either. I can't identify as those things either. Simply identify as unconditional love. Another thing that I understand from my soul perspective is that God is with me. God is with you, with us, always, always. It's not something hovering over us or watching us, but within us, literally enlivening us, moving through us and into the world, through our words, through our eyes, through our hands, through our actions, using us in beautiful ways if we allow. And another thing that I've come to understand, and I said this earlier, the universe is always conspiring for my highest good, not just because I'm special. No, I mean for all of us. Even when it doesn't look or feel like it, the universe is always conspiring for our highest good. The truth is, you just don't know what's really happening. Our minds just can't understand what we call divine, this divine play. We think that the world is falling apart and burning down in front of us. But really, in order for anything to be created in this world, something else has to be destroyed. And that is the law of nature. So whatever is being destroyed, rest assured that something else will rise up in its place. If you believe, like I do, that God is love and that God is within you, and God is always conspiring for your highest good and for the highest good of all involved in every situation, whether you understand it or not, that means that for whatever is being destroyed, something better is going to come in its place eventually. And honestly, if I'm going to believe in anything, why wouldn't I want to believe in that? Why not believe that it's all going to be for our highest good one way or another? That the universe is conspiring for the benefit of my highest good, my connection with God, my connection with my soul, that those things are going to be strengthened by whatever is happening around me and in my own personal life. why would I choose to believe something else? If I'm going to believe in conspiracy theories because the human mind is designed to believe in something, why wouldn't I want it to be that conspiracy theory? And if I have the power to choose where I want to put my mind and what I want to build my beliefs around, as we all do, whether you realize it or not, then absolutely. The conspiracy theory that I am going to buy into is that the world, the universe, God is conspiring for my benefit, for your benefit. Whether it feels and looks like that from our human ego understanding or not, that's not the point. So that was the first thing that I was thinking about in this little back and forth between my higher self, my connection with source, my intuition. That's what was coming through when I was driving. And the next thing that was coming through kind of takes this a step further. Maybe it goes in a different direction. I think that they were related. They felt really clearly related to me when they were coming through. So the second thing that I was thinking about, sorry, I had to stop my train of thought for a moment. My daughter texted me from school needing me to buy her supplies for her class project that she just told me about. She was supposed to have a poster board today at school, and she does not have one. All right, so let me try to get back into what it was that I was saying before I got distracted. Isn't that funny how that works out? Anytime we're onto something, this is the way that my teachers would always explain it, is that when you're onto something, when you're conveying an idea that's really, really important, the illusion tries to stop that from happening, whether that's a technology fail, all of a sudden Zoom crashes, or your tech doesn't work anymore, or your power goes out, or someone texts you and interrupts you. It's all part of this illusion mechanism that's trying to keep us from really tapping into the truth of God, of ourselves. So to go back to what I was thinking, there's no judgment because I have fallen into this same trap for many years. So I just want to preface this by saying that. Just ask my husband. We used to have, I hate to say it, like I would get really emotionally attached to my point of view, especially when it comes to political or religious or legal matters that I felt like I had a very, very justified, very righteous reason to believe what I believed. And he might sometimes have an alternative perspective. And because I was so attached to myself being right, I know better, I would get really, really upset. And we didn't have the most pleasant conversations over these last few political cycles, honestly. So I feel ya. I understand. Been there, done that. But I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I wonder how, as a spiritual person or a religious person, how is it that we allow ourselves to get away with a sense of hatred or resentment for another person, whether it's a person in power or our neighbor down the street, a group of people, or even an institution? How do we give ourselves permission to hate or to spew garbage about that person? I understand. I do. If someone or an institution creates or enforces policies that harm you or your loved ones, or anyone really, because we're all in this together, we're all connected. I understand the tendency, the temptation to give into those really low vibration emotions and then just stay in that density, recycling it and refueling it, reigniting it until you become it. And then again, like I said before, you can't tell where you end and that emotion begins, and vice versa. So that is the ego's part that we are here to transcend. That's not the truth of who we are. And I contend, I really mean it, that to hate anything or anyone, no matter what, that's going against our soul. It's going against God. Because remember, God is everything, everyone, everywhere. God is you, God is me, God is them, whoever them is to you. So how could we hate anything without hating God? That would mean that we are rejecting an aspect of God that has manifested in this world, whether it is in ourself, our neighbor, our politician in power, whatever it is. When you start to go into the sense of hatred for, or rejection of, or judgment of, you are literally hating, rejecting, judging God in God's play, who is simply wearing the costumes of all of those that you would hate. So I know that some people might say something like, well, even God hates evil. And I kind of have a different perspective on that at this point because, yes, I think it's pretty obvious. There is good, there is evil. There's also a lot of overlap, a lot of gray area that I'm willing to accept is also there. Evil obviously is not something that we want to strive for. It's not a force we want used on ourselves or our loved ones. It's not something that we're so happy exists in the world. And it's here for a reason. So to say that God hates evil, I don't really like that wording. I don't think it expresses the point of what evil actually is here to do. First of all, I think evil simply means an unawareness of God. So if someone is quote unquote evil or acting in an evil way, it's because they're acting from a place where they do not believe that God exists or that they are connected to God and to the whole. That's what evil means. That's what darkness is. It's a lack of light. So if someone or something is deemed evil, that's just saying that the person or even the institution is completely lacking awareness of God. Not that God is absent in that situation, because God is all things everywhere all the time. Something can't exist without God being part of it. So really, it's just that lack of awareness of God that allows someone or something to behave in a way that we would call evil. And the fact that it exists means that it is permitted by God. It is also, in a way, part of God because it's part of creation. It is allowed to exist because God is giving us an opportunity to see it and to transcend it, to come back home to love, to come back home to our divinity in the presence of what looks like its opposite. And when we recognize the lack of love, the lack of God awareness, aka evil, that gives us a reflection back to ourselves of what it is that we don't want ourselves to go into, what it is that we are not, so that we can remember what we are. Those of us that choose it anyway. And some people get lost in the trap of thinking with the ego mind and feeling that separation from God or thinking that God does not exist. And then again, that lack of awareness or that lack of recognition of the divine and how we're all connected leads them to do, again, quote unquote, evil things. And then some people take that a step further and say, well, there simply is no God because evil is allowed to exist. How can God allow things that are bad in the world if God is love? And again, that's just not the language that I think really gets to the essence of this question. The evil or the corruption or the greed or the hatred or the racism, all of those things exist within the human condition because they are here to be our teachers. Everything is a teacher. Every emotion, every feeling, every thought, everything that happens to us, every interaction we have, every relationship we have, they are all teachers in some way. And what those things are teaching us in this particular instance is that is not who we are. That is not who we came here to be. That we can choose a different way, a different path if we can respond from our higher self rather than react from our ego self. We can transcend all things on our path back to our realization of union with the divine. In most spiritual traditions, actually, there is an understanding that we are not really capable of seeing ourselves for who we are. I know my teacher says no one can truly see their own face, which is why nature reflects back to us who we are. through our karmas, through our relationships and interactions and situations, through our emotions, and so on. These are all mirrors to show us who we really are, how our actions may be leading us closer to who we really are, or may be leading us further away from who we came here to be. And it's not a judgment, it's not a punishment, it's simply a reflection to help us get back on course. So everything in nature is God reflecting back to us something about ourselves for this purpose. So when something comes up that we perceive as evil or terrible or this or that, that is then an opportunity for us to recognize in that moment that that's not actually who we are and who we want to be and how we want to choose to live our life. So you can see what someone else is doing, and instead of judging it or criticizing it, or giving in to the temptation to hate them for it. Instead of doing those things, try to catch yourself when that comes up in you and recognize it as an opportunity to learn more about yourself, to learn more about God. Ask yourself, does this resonate with me and how I want to be, how I want to show up, how I want to relate with God, with myself, with others? And if it's not, then that is a message for you to not engage in that behavior or do those things. Instead, to choose love and compassion, service, to hold faith and surrender to that faith. That's how we learn who we are, by recognizing what it is that we're not. That's how we strengthen our connection with Source, with Spirit, by prioritizing it in the face of things that look like the opposite. So those are opportunities for us. And if God really hated evil, all right, well, I know that I might step on some toes here, and I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings or step on anybody's beliefs, but here's the thought that just keeps coming to me. If God really hated things that are quote unquote evil, why are they allowed to exist? If God is truly omnipotent, omniscient, all-powerful, all-knowing, the Alpha, Omega, all of that, the creator of everything that we see, and even the things that we cannot see in this vast universe, how could it be that things exist against God's will? It doesn't make any sense to me. God could eradicate evil very easily if God is all-powerful and didn't want it to be here. So to me, that means, and I know that this is really hard for people to digest. I've been thinking about this for a long time. So if this is pushing on something in you, just again, breathe, soften, let whatever resonates today resonate, and plant a seed perhaps for something that might continue to develop for you in the future. But for me, this means the fact that evil exists and is allowed to happen, the fact that terrible things are allowed to happen around us and even to us, doesn't mean that God doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean that God is not all-powerful, and it doesn't mean that God does not love you, and that things are not going to go for your highest good and for the highest good of all involved. It doesn't mean any of those things. Just the fact that everything is going on around you is coming from God with God's permission. There's a great freedom in that. If you truly believe that God is on your side, always loving and pushing for you to wake up and recognize your connection with Source, it's not here to harm us. It's here to teach us. It is here to help us understand who it is that we really are and where it is that we're really going as an individual, as a collective, and as a consciousness that is being uplifted through these trials and tribulations. It's not a judgment. It's not a punishment. It's an opportunity for us to continue to observe what's going on around us and grow from that if we choose to. Whew. Couple of deep breaths here. So that was a lot. I hope when I listen back to this, it's all understandable enough that you guys are able to take at least a little bit from this and chew on it for a little while. In my spiritual tradition, we call it grinding the sacred knowledge, really, like taking little bitty bites of things and just working hard to digest them, to integrate them so that we have a better understanding of what it is that's really going on. So again, I know that this was a lot. It was coming through today, like it felt like it needed to be said. So I wanted to say it. And I thank you so much for taking the time to listen. When this was coming through in the car, I knew that I just had to get it out while it was still fresh, because I think it is really important for people to remember some of these things, or to at least take a moment and consider these ideas, which might still be a little hard to consider, but I had to give you guys the opportunity, I guess. And some of us have hatred in our hearts for others, for some of our leadership, or for certain people, neighbors, family members, whatever it is. If you can look into your own heart and you see that hatred or that resentment, no matter how justified you feel it is, remember, justification is just something coming from the ego, not your higher self. When you notice that feeling within you, pause for a moment and think about it. If you have hatred in you, isn't that what we would call evil? Because it's a lack of awareness of the truth of God, the truth that God is in all, as all, and we're all connected. And is that not something that with your awareness, you might want to shift out of because you don't want to feel that way? You don't want to continue to feed that lie? And if you're finding it really hard to have a sense of compassion or love or understanding or forgiveness for someone else right now, maybe that is on the other end of a political spectrum or believes in something vastly different than you, or maybe just kind of irritated you while you were driving. Just remember that we are all individuals, but we are all part of this tapestry that God is weaving, that every single person that's in your awareness, every single person, every single being that lives on this planet, whether you're aware of them or not, is all a piece of God, carries a piece of God within them, is actually God manifest in these different forms. So if you can remember that, yes, we are all individual and we're supposed to have our own unique perspectives and understandings and ways of connecting with the divine, because that's how God designed us. However, we all play together. We all work together in this symphony, this, as one of my teachers describes it, this masterpiece. We are all part of the masterpiece. We are all masterpieces within ourselves because we are all a piece of the master. So if you find it hard to accept or forgive something that somebody else is doing, just think about that and allow yourself to return back to that place of love, unconditional love. God is love, and love is the answer, always, anytime. If you're watching the news and you get really, really angry about a particular thing that you see happening, or you get really fearful or upset, instead of saying terrible things about that person or despising them or spewing more garbage, either within yourself or in conversations with others, could you just allow that person to be as they are and trust that maybe, just maybe, that person is also God in human form? And through that person, just like through you, through me, through everybody, God is moving, God is speaking, God is doing constantly through us because we're a piece of God. So why wouldn't it make sense that perhaps, even if you don't like the way it's looking right now, even if it scares you, maybe God is doing something through this right now as well. And this human that you are hating or resenting, this person is still worthy of love just like you are, just like everybody is, because everybody is inherently worthy of love, not because of anything they've done or said, but because they too are a piece of God. If you can allow yourself to soften just a little bit more when you find yourself angry or consumed with hatred or overwhelmed with fear, and just remember that God is love, everything that God allows is being allowed for a reason. So what good might come from it? You don't have to have an answer for that question, but just to start to hold the belief that everything that happens is happening for your highest good. And if you can continue to remind yourself of that, even if you don't believe it all the way right now, the more you start to really tap into that identity of being connected with God and trusting that God is here for your highest good and for the highest good of all involved, then you can start to loosen your grip, or really the ego starts to loosen its grip. And you can start to surrender more and more to the faith, to the trust, and then God will show you all the things that are happening for your highest good when you allow yourself to see them, and you'll be blown away. So I hope that this message today, this episode, helps anyone who just needed a little reminder to keep the faith, to keep coming back to love. Really, love is the ultimate weapon against all negativity. Because again, love is an awareness of God, and what we call negativity is not the absence of God, but the lack of awareness of God. Love is who we are. Love is who we've always been. Love is what we are returning to. And instead of just waiting until we die and join back with God, why don't we just go ahead and embrace that right now and create a heaven on earth? It is possible. I believe it's already happening. It's just up to us how quickly we allow that to happen, how quickly our collective consciousness shifts. All right, everybody, that was a lot. I hope that, I hope that you got something from this. Maybe something resonated. And if so, please share this with someone who might also need to hear this message today. Much love to all of you. Remember, you are already whole. You already have everything you need within you. Keep returning to that. And I'll see you next week when we return to her. Namaste. If today's episode resonated with you, please subscribe to the mailing list and the show notes so that you never miss an update. And please also share this episode with someone else who might be ready to return home to herself. If you're finding value in this content and feel called to support the show with a small monthly donation, please click the link in the show notes. Your contribution will help offset the time, energy, and costs of producing this show, which will be a win-win for everyone. And if you're ready to dive deeper into this healing work with me, head on over to wholebeingjourney.com to explore ways that we can work together. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you all next week when we return to her.